Well, hello and welcome to the J. Sterling Hughes Show, where we share the secrets and the strategies of how we are building a rapidly growing law practice. You know, over the past 9 years, we have grown from 0 attorneys to over 25 and doing over $15 million in revenue. And my purpose here is to document what's working and what's not working with hopes that you can take that and you can recontextualize that into your practice and shorten your success curve. My name is Jeff Hughes, and I'm your host. And today's episode is really a question and answer or a brainstorming session that I had with a very innovative, fairly large firm down in Oklahoma, Ball, Morse, and Lowe. And so I talked with their team on how our firm has converted from hourly to fixed fee. They're doing that for parts of their practice, and just wanted to kind of hear about our experience and what we've had. So I'm going to share this conversation with you, and I hope that you can get value out of it as you're considering that, or potentially considering converting your firm or parts of your firm from hourly to fixed fee. Enjoy.
I really loved the stuff you sent. Really amazing, high value stuff. I think maybe, I don't know where to start. I know you just recorded a session on, making the transition from hourly to fixed fee. And you have a lot of great material here. I think specifically we're Baltimore Slow is considering the family law aspect of making that move. We are currently hourly. We've been talking about it for years now, and we believe in it. But it is helpful to hear your story, to hear what you've done, and then be able to ask questions about how that's worked, what your experience has been, and kind of get into whatever details you feel comfortable sharing. So would it be good for you to maybe walk us through your story a little bit and we jump from there?
Yeah, and just stop me as I roll through it. So yeah. Whatever is of interest to you all. So we started the firm actually in 2000, do my math here, so 9 years ago in June. So that'd be 14? And for the first 18 months, we did a little of everything. So we had a family law practice going, which was my background, criminal law practice, a tiny bit of PI, a couple business cases smattered in there, a couple probate cases in there, and just a tiny bit of estate planning. So we were doing everything, and the reality is we were kind of mediocre to bad, and we did not like the direction we were going. So after 18 months, we grew from 0 to 8 attorneys in 18 months, mainly because of our digital marketing prowess. And we suffered from the problem of the fact that we can get clients at will. We just thought because we can get them, let's just take them. And that was not a good move because we couldn't serve them well. So Tony and I, my partner, we decided we were just going to do a major pivot and focus on what we felt like we can be amazing at and start to innovate within that context. And so that was family law. So we went down from 8 to 4 lawyers, cut our teams in half, let half our clients go, and started really focusing starting in February of 2016, exclusively on family law and doing 100% fixed fee and building some technology tools to support all that. So that's really was our big pivot, was in February of 2016. By August of that year, we had gone, it took us about whatever that would be, 7 months or so to cycle out of all of our hourly cases and convert everyone to fixed fee. So by August of 16, we are 100% fixed fee and have never looked back. So we are today 26 or 27 attorneys over 2 states and 100% fixed fee, no hourly cases whatsoever. And within that, we only do divorce, post-judgment, and paternity. And we've got a small smattering of prenups that we do, but it's less than 0.2%. In a given year, we'll do 3,000 cases, or we'll serve 3,000 people. And some of them will have multiple files related to them because some have come in for a divorce and there's also a rescinding order attached to it or something. So that totals up. At any one time, we've got 900 active files going right now. So it's easier for us to do fixed fee because we only do those 3 matter types. I mean, if you count post-judgment, that could be a whole bunch of things, but whenever you're really restricted to those 3, you can hone your skills and your processes all around those 3. And so because of that, we've just gotten much, much better at fixed fee over time. And it took us a lot of trial and error. I mean, lots, many cases where we just got totally killed on. So that's where we're at today. So
Can you give us an example of what you mean by cases you got totally killed on?
yeah,
What
so yeah, we would quote $4,000 for
Not turning them
a
off.
fee, thinking. Yeah, so we'd go like $4,000 for a fee, thinking it would take us 3 months, and it would take us 9, and it'd be the equivalent of $20,000 in an hourly case. So that's getting killed, getting stuck on files because we didn't design our agreements right. That would last us 2 or 3 years. A couple of those examples stick out to me. Cases that we just didn't draft the agreement right and got stuck on a technicality on it because, we never went back on any of that with clients. We never went back to clients one time and asked for any more money whenever we screwed up. We just felt like, we got to learn that lesson in the hard way. And the best way to do that is just deal with it. So we did that. We never once went back on that. So that would be examples of where we just got destroyed on. Over time, we've learned a really couple key important things, and we went through a complete refresh of our fixed fees arrangements, our fixed fee agreements last year, and that has made a major difference. So that transition from the original philosophy on fixed fee to where we are today was a big transition. And so that primarily was around using a quoting tool for all of our quotes and going to time-bound stages for the majority of them, especially on stage 1 and stage 2s, having those be time-bound. That made a big change for us. And one of the things that we suffered with,
because that's going to so on your timelines that you have, are you all pretty fixed with that by your court system, right? Like your court expects you to kind of get things through this fast, or is that just you guys kind of heavily pushing them to get to where they need to be fast?
Heavily pushed. The courts are certainly not tied into those deadlines whatsoever. The only potential deadline we have, and not even a deadline, it's a you can't act until this happens, is in Wisconsin. We have a 4-month waiting period from the date of service. Illinois does not have that. So it's just in Wisconsin. So we can't finish within 4 months in Wisconsin, barring really unusual circumstances. So
ours is 3. So I mean, it's something similar. Like we're stuck for 3 months if you got kids. You're just you're not going to move faster. So okay, that answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I am interested in kind of, you said it's made such a change. 2 questions on that is, one, when you went to fixed fees, was it an immediate uptick in productivity revenue, or did it take you a while with those hits and misses to really see it, and then you made a change last year and it really took it to another level, it sounds like. And then the second question is, do you still see cases where there's misses with that, or has that percentage gone from 5% to 1% or less than 1%, where with that quoting tool it still gets out of hand, or maybe the new fee agreement addresses that and doesn't allow it to get out of hand?
Yeah. So first question I heard you ask, do we see an immediate lift once we changed over to fixed fee from an hourly model, right?
Yes.
The answer to that would be a few attorneys did, but as a whole, we did not. And it's because we implemented it poorly and incorrectly and just with a lot of just not knowing what we were doing. So we did not see a lift right away there. It probably actually was pretty even compared to what we were doing before in hourly. So the lifts that we saw were in collection percentages. That's certainly, we saw a lift there. And just support bureaucracy was a lift. We had less of that because we weren't so concerned about tracking hours anymore. So that's what we experienced right away. And I can tell you how we fixed those things later, or if we want to now, but we obviously addressed those over time and got better at it. But in terms of your next question, do we still see cases that are poor hourly, like if you converted it to hourly would be a money loser? And the answer is yes, for sure. It is a very small number. I rarely hear about them at all, but they certainly happen. I would say the cases where we actually make out better than if we did hourly are much greater. So our effective hourly rate for our lawyers is substantially higher than the hourly rate that's in our areas. I mean, it's a lot higher. So we know that it's very efficient from a billing standpoint. And so a couple of the high level things we've noticed is that once we went to fixed fee, we saw an improvement, and we track our client satisfaction with a metric called NPS for Net Promoter Score. We saw a lift there. And then when we revised our agreements last year, we saw another lift. And along with that revision came higher fees. So the more we've charged and the more restrictive we've made our agreements, the higher the client satisfaction has been. So it's certainly counterintuitive to what you would expect.
Jeff, I'm sorry, can you say that again? The more narrow focused the agreements were, the higher the client satisfaction?
Yeah, so in our first evolution of the agreements, we pegged them to court events. So like in divorce, you have, your 4-month waiting period. Once that was over with, and then whenever that first status date is whenever we peg the agreement to go from stage 1 to stage 2. So the first opportunity for the client to be divorced is how we defined it. And that's squishy because some judges will 4 months and a day, they'll have you in court. Some will be 8 months. Okay. So it was really all over the place. And then if it got rescheduled, it pushed the date out for the stage to be over. And so once we went from that sort of unknown time frame to say 6 months or 5 months, actually it's 5 months in Wisconsin. So at 5 months, if we don't have a signed agreement, you don't have to necessarily be divorced. We just have to have a totally executed marital settlement agreement. If we have that, then the client only pays for that first stage. If we don't have that at 5 months, then the client has to pay us for the next stage because we haven't settled for some reason. So whenever clients come in to see you, almost 80% of them will say, yeah, this is an easy peasy case. This will settle, no problem. We'll work this out. Well, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen at that rate, even though we give it our best effort. So when we made our agreements more restrictive, Brian, and put in the time bound, and then at the same time we implemented our quoting tool, and our fees went up from an average of probably 30%, we saw a higher client satisfaction. And I think under the covers or under the hood, reasons for that were, I think our lawyers got a lot more serious about moving the cases along, so they got over with quicker. And speed to conclusion is not something that clients will say they really want, but it is like the number one thing that I think they want. So when we went to time bound, we saw our lawyers push the cases a little bit faster and be much more proactive on getting those agreements out and getting everything ready to be signed and executed. So we saw clients appreciate that more. And they told us in the form of a higher NPS.
What is your process for tracking NPS?
So we track it at a number of different stages. It's a single question we send out, as you know, and it goes out after the initial consultation. It goes out, I think, 90 days, and then it goes out after the matter concludes. And so the number that's the most important to us is after the matter concludes. That's the lowest of the three numbers. The highest is right after the initial consultation, which is like in the 80s. And in the middle one, I don't know what that is, but our final one's 55. So that's the one that we look at as the most viable because that's after the matter's over. The client's got their agreement done. Everything's concluded and they're out of the court system.
That's great. And just for my team, I don't know that everyone here is familiar with NPS. It's Net Promoter Score. And the single question you ask is, we do this in our marketing team at different points, but it's basically, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your experience, or how likely are you? No, it's how likely are you to refer a friend? That's right. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so they rank it on a scale of 1 to 10. And then remind me, it's been a minute since I've.
Yeah, 9 and 10 are promoters. 7/8 are neutrals, and 6 and below are detractors. And so you just average those numbers together to get your number. It's not really a percentage; it's more of a solid number.
That's right. It can be negative 100 to positive 100. Most firms, I think law firms are typically in the 0 range to 20. Is that right?
Yeah, the reports I've seen are in the 20s, and they vary. Yeah. I mean, I saw Clio's recently, and it was like 24. Right. So I just say it's in the 20s. It seems like that's pretty accepted as the number.
That's right. Yeah, so 50 is an excellent.
So clients are pretty mad disappointed, or
And
unlikely to promote law firms in general across the industry.
correct.
Correct. If they rated a 0 to a 6, then they're, according to their metrics, detractors. They're going to actually detract from your reputation. 7s and 8s are going to be neutral. They just won't say anything. 9s and 10s are promoters. They'll actually promote you.
Yeah. Okay. That's very helpful. That's great. What percentage of your people do you get after the fact that answer that question? Do you know?
Yes. Let me think about that. I'm not that close to that detail.
That's okay.
It's in the 30s.
Okay.
30%. Yeah.
Okay. That's what I was thinking.
And I would bet you, Eric, we probably have someone on the team that's also calling them and asking them to do it too. And
That's
the lawyers, we pay the lawyers for a bonus for every online review they get. So there's another incentive there too.
Great. That's really helpful. Any questions from that section? You mentioned earlier, I'm kind of going to jump around a little bit maybe. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Jeff?
please.
Unless you have the next topic. Just some questions we had. One of the things you just talked about is, as we talk about the transition from billable hour to fixed fee, obviously that impacts the team. And we're very focused on our team and building a strong culture, being great leaders, and providing a place that people want to work and be a part of. They see a bigger vision. They see it's about serving the clients, not about us building our own worlds, but really helping people. And so when you think about the transition, I think you had mentioned in your email that there was a high turnover of attorneys, which we've seen just in general. Family law can burn a lot of attorneys out with the level of the things they deal with are difficult and can be very emotionally difficult. And so a lot of people choose not to practice family law anymore. But specifically, people who did continue to practice family law that maybe didn't understand the model. They didn't like the changes in the model. Can you talk to that? Like what did you see dealing with attorneys and even staff, because they're critical? Was the response to going to fixed fee? And I mean, you mentioned, that you quit measuring hours, which, on one hand is great, but then you measure collection rate, or not rate, but the total dollars collected, number of cases completed, or stages. Like what is it they're focused on getting done instead of billable hours?
Yeah, I have a lot to share on this, Eric. So stop me if I'm wandering away from the purpose of the question. So I'll start first with the transition. So when we transition from hourly to the stages or the fixed fee, the first off, what we're telling the lawyers is, hey, you're not going to get paid for 4 months or 5 months or 6 months. That's when you get credit for the collection. So we had to do a transition compensation for that period of time to help us get there. So I remember doing that, and that went fine. There wasn't any issues around that because the lawyers were made whole, and it was our brain, our idea. So we're not going to hold them accountable to support that financially. So I remember doing that, and they initially, as you can imagine, were very skeptical about it, and they could certainly, from experience, point all the potential problems out with it, and they were all valid concerns. So we had to work through those, and they were really game to trust us and give it a shot. And so they all loved it once we went to it, especially because they didn't have to track hours. We didn't demand any hours tracking. We started to for a while. We asked them to go ahead and still track your hours so we can see where our value is. And like 30% of the hours were tracked and only a few. And it was like guesswork at the end of the month. So that didn't work out. So it's best, in our view, just not even to ask them to track hours at that point. So that's when we transitioned.
That real quick. Do you all have any ethics opinions from Wisconsin or Illinois as to tracking hours on flat fee and how you all handle them? Because I know that's something here on when fees are earned and you have to have lists of the progress. How do you guys handle that ethical portion? Does that make sense to show you've worked enough to collect the fee at that point?
Yeah. There's no ethical opinions that are on point in these two jurisdictions for that. So we have probably in a given year, we'll have one, maybe two cases go to arbitration where there's a fee dispute on that. And we just have to recreate as much of the actual work that we do. We still don't like submit hours because we don't track hours. And that's always hard for the arbitrators to get their brains around. They can't really understand that. So it's something that we prefer not to go to arbitration because we just know we're going to get, of the three people, two of them aren't going to, they just can't comprehend that anyone else could do fixed fee, even though there's a lot to do it. So there's no opinion on point. The way we just deal with it is we do the best we can to show them the work that we did. And we've also pointed to other studies that attempt to say, hey, a divorce in Wisconsin or Illinois is going to cost X dollars on an hourly, and we're always below that number. So we know we're providing more value to our clients, but getting sometimes the arbitrators to see that is really difficult. But out of 3,000 cases, we're willing to go to arbitrate one or two of them. So it's just part of the issue of going to fixed fee. You're just going to have to deal with that.
Great.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, please stop me anytime. Okay, so back to your question, Eric. You talk about turnover. We didn't see turnover as a result of fixed fee. What I think I was trying to articulate is that we've got 26 or 27 attorneys right now. We've probably had an additional 30 that have come through our practice in that amount of time. So let's just say that number 60, we've kept 27. The attorneys that have come through that have been the most experienced in family law, the ones that, okay, we're like super excited. We got this really experienced attorney. This is going to be great. And they're going to be able to plug and play, go get right after it. The reality is that about 30% of those folks did not make it. And they didn't make it almost across the board. They didn't make it because they could never make the switch from being passive in their practice to being proactive. Because at least up here in our world, the judges dictate the pace of the case, opposing party does, the client's urgency to get the case over with. Those are all the factors. And most lawyers are sit and wait for someone to do something and push it on until finally the time comes up or the court date's coming up. Now we got to start circulating proposals and that sort of thing. And so that's the inertia, that's the culture. And those attorneys that didn't make it, that's the major reason why they didn't. Like last year, we had an excellent attorney in Illinois. I mean, she's awesome. She was one of our partners. And she just said, hey, I don't like being proactive. I don't like doing it. I like to just do hourly and do my thing. And so this isn't for me. So they've told me that. So I know that that's some of the reasons. So for us, the ideal person to come in is someone with a lot of life experience, and even more ideal is someone that used to be a paralegal for a bunch of years. And then they went to law school at night and they became a lawyer. Someone like that is like ideal because they've been kicked around in life a lot and they are going to be great with clients and be empathetic and understanding. And they're not tainted by long history of hourly and trying to relearn all those habits in a different way. So that's how we've kind of boiled it down. So whenever I do all of the initial screening, and that's what I look for. And those attorneys tend to do the best.
And is it difficult for you to find attorneys to grow and add to the team? I mean, I guess break that up. One, are you wanting to grow to 50 attorneys in those areas, or whatever, 35? And then even, whether it's growth or replacing attorneys who do turn, is it difficult to find someone qualified and that is open to your system?
No, it hasn't been. It was for a while, like during COVID and the year or two after COVID, it was really difficult to hire, period. Now it's the opposite of that. Now I've got a lot of candidates that are qualified. So we want to grow substantially. We have high aspirations beyond where we're at right now and moving our firm into other states. So that's part of our long-term plan. But our strategy has been to go to Indeed. That's how we've actually done the best. We used to spend a lot of money with the state bar websites in Illinois and Wisconsin, and those just invariably don't return well. And what's worked out really well for us is really hyper-focused ads on Indeed and running them through a pretty rigorous screening process. And so right now we don't have that issue. And the reality is we've been around long enough now that we've got a pretty good reputation. So lawyers will want to work with us. So that's been a blessing, but it hasn't always been that way, especially in the early days when we were burning people out. It was really tough.
And so what does that look like that attorneys aren't getting burnout? It seems like what you're saying is your attorneys are enjoying their work-life culture. What is a typical work-life culture? How many cases are they running? Are they grinding at the office till 8 at night? Are they working weekends? Are they leaving the office at 2:30 whenever they want? Or they working from home? What's that culture?
Yeah.
Like?
So this is the people management systems have been the single hardest thing for us to figure out in our model. So this has been really, really just a slog. Selling has been hard, learning how to sell it, but getting the people systems down right has been the hardest. And so our model works like this. We have what we call partner groups, and there are really senior lawyers that run the groups that are the partners, and they'll have a set of senior associates and associates that work with them on their team. And they each have their own P&L, and they set the requirements around collections, all of those sort of things within their own group. And they have really good mentoring and coaching of the associates, the senior associates, but the partners have essentially their own firm within our firm. So we converted to that in December of last year, and we're really, really pleased with results. And so what we have seen is no one has burned out. I've left because they don't do family law since we've converted over to that. That's only been 8 months now, 7 months. So that's been a really, really good transition, but it took us 1.5 years to work into that because it required a comp change and some other things along with it. And that's been really tough, but it's worked out well since then. From a culture standpoint, we have a remote culture. So we have our offices, everyone in the office, everyone has an office to go to, but they can work from wherever they want. So we don't care about that. Now we're moving to all non-lawyer consults. And so the lawyers aren't required to do even their own consults anymore. Some of them still are because we're in the midst of transitioning to that right now. But we're about 50-50. So about half our consults are done by lawyers and half by non-lawyers. That has been the biggest shock of my life to see how well that has worked. Just mind blowing. I'm 50 and for 30 of those years, I've been closed off to that idea, even potentially working, but it's working well. And that's the single biggest area of consternation for lawyers is having to do their own consults and everything that goes along with the consults, especially in our system. We ask a lot more of the attorneys than other firms would around consults because we think the sales process is really important. So from a culture standpoint, each of those partner groups has their own culture budget that they can do what they want with. We encourage them to do one activity a month together. We have 2 team-wide full firm meetings twice a year. And we have every Tuesday, we have what's called the summons. And it's a all hands on deck meeting on Google Meet for 30 minutes where it's just all celebration is really what it is. Fast-paced shout outs and anniversaries and, atta girls for different things people do and just that sort of stuff. And we'll give the state of one of the teams where the leader will come on and talk about that. That's been a really positive thing that's bound us together. We put out a newsletter every Monday that's like a 3 or 4 page PDF essentially of stories about court cases that people have won or, someone got married, someone had a baby, all those sort of things are in there. And that's another cultural tool that we use it comes out every Monday. So that works really well. So all in all, I think the lawyers would tell you that they love the culture and it's really rewarding to them and they have a voice in it. And it's because they have these smaller teams they're a part of, I think. And we also have management huddles every morning at 8:30 that all of the partners can come to if they want, just to kind of just come in and see what's happening in the firm or not come in if they don't want to. And so that's been good. So we really work on a lot of those pieces to help people feel like it's transparent and they're informed and that sort of thing.
And that's fantastic. How of 26 or 27 attorneys, how many teams is that currently?
Yeah, so we have 4 primary offices, and there are 5 teams among those 4. So one office has 2 teams in it.
Okay.
One office has a single partner, doesn't have any associates. She doesn't want any. So I guess that team technically, that office, that's Madison, technically has 2. But she just has a paralegal, so they form that's a team of just 2.
That's
So
great.
technically 6.
Okay.
But their top line is a percentage of their collections, and out of that, they pull all their labor expenses out and a modest amount for facilities expenses. That's part of their P&L that they look at.
Yeah. So salaries, overhead, and then so that counts as their expenses. That's great.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, it's such fantastic information, Jeff. I have a whole list of things I've thought of since we're talking here, but I don't want to cut other people.
Yep.
Okay, great. So Jeff, one of the things, we'll get into like the consultation, that idea of attorneys not taking their own consults. We went to that about December of 21, but we basically hired an attorney to handle all the firm's consults. And so we basically, we book him solid. He's an attorney by trade, or by license, but not by trade. He'd done a lot of other things, sold insurance and stuff. So he understood sales well. Mm-hmm. And so that really freed up a ton of time. We had attorneys doing hundreds of consultations in a year, while we're asking them to do other things. And we found, sometimes they'd have great close rates. Sometimes they'd have terrible close rates. It kind of depended on how hungry they were to fill their book up in hours. If they were busy, they weren't as hungry to close a deal. If they were overwhelmed, they told the person, this has been a great consult. Come back to me in 2 months and we'll get you started. Yep. So they just walked to the next firm. So we sold a lot of that, and we want to talk and hear more about your process there and your thoughts. But you got to get people to a consultation, and I know your background is marketing and sales, and you have done a lot of digital marketing through a sister company, I believe, and I don't know how you communicate all that, but I know that's been a big part of the secret sauce is the ability to generate leads. Do you feel comfortable sharing anything about that? And then kind of a co-question, though, is because you are really good at that, what is the expectation on the attorneys then to get referral leads and to work in the community to build their own, generation of professional partners and referral sources? So you get those referrals as well as the marketing leads you're generating.
Yeah, you asked a lot of questions there, Eric. So
sorry about that.
Yeah. So break me up if I'm wondering again here. So, and by the way, nothing is off limits. So you can ask me how much we made last month, and I'll tell you. I don't care. So it's why I'm wide open on this. So, I forgot your first one though. What'd you lead with on your questions?
Oh well, I was talking about the consultation process, and we can jump.
Yeah.
Really more. What is? How do you get the consultations? Right.
Okay.
Your marketing background, and
let's talk about consultations because I have
Yeah.
some very painful experiences that I can share from. So,
Perfect.
All right. So your description of very volatile close rates is 100% shared by us. And there's many factors that go into that, but I'll share the ones I think are the most relevant. One is you have some seasonality in family law. So that's okay. You can't avoid that. Secondly, you have a very wide disparity between ability to sell between one lawyer to the next lawyer. And lawyers that are really good at it tend to get busier, and so they're in consults less. So those that aren't good at it are not so busy, so they're in consults more, which is the exact opposite of what you want. Okay. So then you've got what you said where lawyers get fatigued because they're just freaking busy. They're handling tons of cases and a lot of stress and a lot of clients calling them. They don't want to go to another consult, and then they look at the notes and they just think, oh, this client doesn't have any money, so I'm going to waste my time. And so they just go in there and they flag it and they give it, not the effort they would if they were hungry. Okay. So then you've got probably 25 other factors that I haven't mentioned that all mix into that. What that produces is a volatility that makes predicting your business almost impossible. Mm-hmm. On top of that, for us, we have a consult process that we spent a year plus developing, and hundreds of consults went into developing this consult process. And we are really strict about, we want the lawyers to follow this. We even record it, send that call to the Philippines, and we audit it and give that back. Okay. So that's how serious we are about it, because you need to follow a process rather than shoot from the hip when you're in the consults. Well, the diligence around following the process is something that you're constantly chasing, and that's not no fun for the lawyer. So that's not a good thing. And then some that execute on it are just checking boxes. They're not following the spirit of it. They're not connecting. They're not empathizing. They're not doing those things that the client really needs. So all of that stuff is just, it's been the bane of our existence, has been around this consult process. The lawyers hate it for all those reasons you stated, and it's tough on us from a financial and a predictability standpoint. So we finally, we had a great Q1 of this year. Then we got into April and May, and we just dropped off a cliff. We dropped 20% overnight like a brick, and we couldn't figure out why. And so that prompted me to look at some other options. And we ended up finding this consultant called Rich. His name was Richard James. And they swear by this idea that non-lawyers can not only do the consults, but they can do it better because they're following a process. And so I jumped into that with both feet, with a ton of vigor. And we started testing it, had fantastic results. And what he said about improved conversion rates, improved client experience, all that sort of stuff was spot on. So we now have 5 full-time, what we call consult legal assistants that are taking those initial consults. Clients are liking it more. They're funding more. The quoting is better than the lawyers in terms of more accurate, or I shouldn't say more better than lawyers. It's at least on par with what the lawyers have historically produced there. So we're not all converted over. So I don't have, give me a year to give you really good history on that and show you before and after, but we are beyond ecstatic with the results. I mean, we feel like if there's a silver bullet for our firm, this is it, because this solves a lot of problems. So we're really excited about where this is going. We looked at that idea, Eric, of having a full-time lawyer doing it. And we just didn't think that was scalable. We were concerned about that. And you get to a situation where the lawyer's probably not going to be licensed in every state anyway, so they can't give advice. So why go with a lawyer at all? Just go. They can't give advice, then what's the point? Let's go with like really, really professionals on this, salespeople. And we feel like we could hire and scale with that faster.
Question: did you call them, full-time consult legal assistants? Do they have any background in that previously, or is that just your title for your firm?
That's just the title our firm gave them. We had one that did. I have 5 now. I have one that did. One was here before, so she kind of grew up in our firm.
Okay.
But of the new 4 ones that I hired, one did. But we are, as you can imagine, my license on the line. I'm not going to compromise that for anything. So that I am super strict about no advice. And they have to record all their consults. And so I watch them, not all of them, but we watch them and just make sure they're not doing that.
So Jeff, real quick, while we're taking a little pause here, if I called in and talked to your consultant to do that consult with me, your non-lawyer consultant, we have a process in there that they're going to follow. What's the step after that? Are we setting appointments then? How thin is that process, or how many people do they touch before they're meeting an attorney?
Great question. And so we're choppy right now because we're in that transition period of moving over. We're literally 2 weeks into this. So if you called us, the way it's supposed to work and the way we envision it working come October would be an intake agent will answer your phone. And they've got 11-step process that they're following. And their whole purpose is to schedule you with a consult legal assistant. Right now, we're charging $150 for those consults. We want to get to free because we think we're going to open the aperture up and we'll have more volume if we did that. So the idea would be you're in and off the call in 12 minutes and you have a consult that's scheduled with the CLA within 3 days. That's the ideal. Same day consults should be available. We're not there yet. So we would like to get to that point where same day consults are available. What we found is that speed to consult has everything to do with retaining. That's by far the biggest metric, speed to consult. And right now with our lawyers, it's 12 to 15 day wait. And so you can imagine how many clients we lost along the way with that kind of wait. So they get in front of the consult. That consult you have with the CLA, the consult legal assistant, should be 45 minutes or less. And you should walk out of there knowing, ideally we want a funded agreement. That happens about 35% of the time. We're going to get a funded agreement on those calls. 65%, I should say, of those that retain us, 35% do at the initial consult, 65 do on a follow-up. the next day or a couple of days later because they have to gather funds or whatever. So you should walk out of there with a funded agreement. If not, then you should walk out of there at least with your quote. You know what your divorce or your post-judgment or whatever is going to cost you. And so you have that in your hands. And now you're in our follow-up sequence and you're getting information from us. If you funded, you should have a 24-hour onboarding. Within 24 hours, you should be with a lawyer, with your team, onboarding on your case.
Wow.
And you mean they call from the attorney within 24 hours?
You have a scheduled call. If you funded, you actually have a scheduled call with the lawyer within 24 hours.
Yeah, that's what we're doing as well.
So you get your scheduled call. So that's kind of how we do it. They hire within 24 hours. They're getting all of their information to get them set up with their attorney. So
Yep.
Somewhat similar. Okay.
Very similar.
Which could be a ways away, obviously, because of scheduling things, but there's at least a point of contact with the legal assistant. So
right.
Yeah, we at that hire, we get them that during the transition from our intake to our teams, they will do the team then does another kind of intro email. They send them the packet information we need, all the welcome stuff, and that's when they start the scheduling process with the attorney. So that
we get their intake packet, they schedule it back. So we kind of have like a system of checks and balances to make sure we're getting what we needed. So
yeah, we actually send out the intake packet earlier, but we found that only about 18% actually have it completed by the time they get to us, even though we remind them and stuff. So
totally.
Yeah, it's not the greatest.
It's not perfect here yet either. So
Yeah.
That's great information. Any questions on the consultation process?
I'm sure a lot of the questions, I would imagine, part of the training is to get your consult legal assistant to defer, like you said, no legal advice. When you pivoted from using attorney to the consult legal assistant, do you feel like that was a huge stumbling block, that people felt like they had to talk to an attorney, like that was the express lane to get it in? I think you're saying it's not, which is a paradigm shift for us, I think.
It's a mind-blowing paradigm shift for me. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think that. My partner had been suggesting this to me for 5 years, and I stiff-armed him. I can't even tell you why I never tested it, because that's how much I believe not even worth a test, which was the dumbest thinking. And so I don't know how much we lost over the years because of my stubbornness. But what we have found is that it's shockingly low. People a few have said something like, I thought I was meeting with an attorney, or I need to meet with an attorney before I make a decision. So here's how we handle that. Okay, this is TBD exactly on how it's going to work out over the long term. But what we're giving clients is a 7-day money back, 100% money back guarantee from after they meet with a lawyer. And that seems to be really effective. And so every question that the lawyer at the CLA gets that's asking for legal advice or what's the next step or something along like that, the agents are supposed to refer them to the 7-day, hey, let's just get you set up with a lawyer and you get all those questions answered. And that seems to be working really well.
How many of you had pulled that trigger on that money back guarantee yet?
None. And we've been doing it 6 weeks now until we started June 12th. We've had none ask for that.
Okay.
And we've probably had funded through the CLAs at this point somewhere around 70 clients.
Okay.
So, and we have, so.
And so those consult legal assistants are the only people responsible for quoting the fixed fees to the prospective clients. Is that right?
That's how the ideal should work come October. They won't ever be the only ones, because there's some cases, especially post judgments, that are really, really hard to quote because the case has got some nuances to it. So in that case, what we do is right now we're selling a 1-hour coaching with the lawyer for $400, and then the lawyer is going to quote them based on their actual case. So I want to figure out how to quote the majority of those, even under those factual challenges. But we're so early in the process, Zach, I don't have it worked out just yet.
So can you help me understand how, if it is the attorney or whoever it is communicating that fixed fee, does it in a way that it's simple for the client to understand? Because I think part of the challenge. I love conceptually the idea of a fixed fee, and we do it for estate planning, and that's very simple because it's a product that we're providing, and there aren't a lot of um, unknowns that can pop up like there are in a litigious matter like a divorce or something.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the fixed fee phase agreements or similar agreements that I've seen almost seem much more confusing to me than just saying, oh, our attorney charges $300 an hour or whatever the case may be. So I'd be curious how it is that you all communicate it in such a way that makes it easy for the client to get on board and understand it and feel good about it.
Yeah. So the selling part of it has been a real challenge over the years because we are fighting against the norm, and everyone understands hourly, including the lawyer and the client. So it's easy to articulate that. Helping them see how it's different has been really hard. And here's how we have done it, and here's how we're still doing it this way. We first off, we ask the client, and I in the packet I sent Eric a day or two ago, I put my consult process in there, I believe. So you can look at that to supplement it. But so we ask the client, have they ever worked with a lawyer before? And depending on their answer, that will frame how we handle the rest of the consultation. But it's real important to understand the context for that client. If they have never worked with a lawyer before, then we just say, okay, lawyers charge by the hour, but we do it by the job. And we find clients love that more. And so that's usually a much easier sell. If they have worked with a lawyer before and they've charged by the hour, which most of them have, it's helping that client understand that's an apple and we're an orange. And here's how this is going to be different with us. And what we do is we charge by the job. And three important factors that we help them see is that what this does is it opens up communication between you and me. And our whole representation is based on communication, and it's going to make it better because you're not going to get whacked with a bill every time you text me or email me or call me. And you can call me every single day and it's going to still be the same bill. Okay. So that's a big deal for clients. They really latch onto that idea. More philosophical is helping them see how. Second thing we talk about is alignment, meaning we want the same goal. Clients want to be done with us. They don't want to be in the court system. Lawyer wants to conclude the case because we don't get paid more to push it longer like hourly people do. So we help them see that piece of it. And then the last one is that you have certainty during a period of uncertainty in your life. Everything about this is uncertain. Well, we're not going to be one more piece of that uncertainty puzzle for you to deal with. You're going to have certainty around your fees. So clients resonate with that. They love it. And if I've called hundreds of them after the case is over, or I've talked to many of them after the case is over, probably not hundreds, but they'll tell me that the reason why they chose us is because we only do family law and because we have fixed fees. So we know it connects with them. So how do we handle the litigation aspect of it? With divorce, stage one, they're pretty predictable for divorces and paternities. Even post judgments are somewhat predictable in how we stage those out in the beginning because you're not setting for a contested hearing usually there. So stage two usually is very predictable too, except for post judgments. And we do a couple things to combat that. One is that we have a few a la carte things. So we promise the client we'll give you one deposition of opposing party. But if you want us to do more, and some clients can ask for more, they'll pay per deposition. I don't know if that's ever happened in our firm. I'm sure it has somewhere along the way, but nothing comes to mind. Another thing we do, if there's any motions to compel, that's a la carte. If there's a contempt motion, that's a la carte. If there is a restraining order or anything with a separate case number, that's a whole different quote. We don't even try to quote that because we don't know where that's going to go. So if they have a different case number, that's a different matter that we'll have to deal with at that point. Once we get into the trial stage, so less than 4% of our cases even get to a trial stage. Once we get there, if we go to trial, it's a per day fee on top. The odds of any case going to trial is less than 2% in our firm. And we tell the client the numbers on those. And so they're not surprised.
Jeff, has that been a typical what you've seen just in your practice of family law? Because there's been a consensus here about, with most practitioners and the judges, that post-COVID, more cases are actually going to trial than they have before. I think there's been a change in dynamic here in Oklahoma, and it's been pretty heavily seen that people are kind of like, I want my day in court and I want somebody to tell me what's going to happen. And so we have a much more litigious population, I think, than we did pre-COVID. I tell you, in my 11 years of practice, I've had more trials post-COVID than I probably ever did pre-COVID. I didn't know if you've seen that same in Illinois and Wisconsin, or if everybody's still kind of in the same mindset that they are geared towards settlement.
I can't give you a straight answer on that,
Okay.
Glenn. I don't know. I'm
Okay.
not practicing, so the
Okay.
lawyers would tell you that.
Okay.
Our trial fees are big, though. They're usually $25,000 to $30,000 for just getting in that stage, plus a per day. And so lawyers don't lose when they go to trial. They, at this point, they're $40,000
Right.
to $50,000 into a case.
Okay.
What's the average value of your case, Jeff?
The average value right now is $6,900 on average. That's every case blended in there, from the little $2,000 one appearance sort of case to the divorces. So
So you do offer a $2,000 one appearance fixed fee.
yeah, we'll do limited scopes. We do a lot of limited scopes where the client only wants us to represent them at a child support modification hearing or something like that. And those will usually be time bound. Okay, we'll represent for 60 days, your hearing's in 45 days. So that's how we'll do it.
That's great.
When you do them time bound and you're done, are you sending letters telling them, hey, we're done. We've now reached the end of our 60-day period pursuant to our agreement, so we're done representing you?
Yes.
Well, we're talking about trial, Glenn. Anything else stand out
No, that was just
about the process? It's great.
That's per day in court or like prep day?
It's actual court days.
I'm looking at
The agreement I sent you may have that spelled out in there. I'm not sure.
Okay.
It is 300 per day per trial. Yeah.
That's great.
Have you had issues when you're locked in stage wise, right? Where your client, you don't get it done with stage one and they need to go to stage two. There's a funding problem with them to be able to do that, and then difficulty getting out or anything like that? Or is it usually pretty streamlined? Does that make sense? Like, you get someone to that point, they know that that's coming, don't get it settled, and so you're going to have to withdraw because they're not going to be able to pay it. Do you have that happen often?
But we've gotten to a point where it doesn't happen very often where there's any sort of challenge. But it's taken a while to kind of figure out the communication cadence the client needs to prep for that.
Okay.
And so they know it's coming and they're watching that big time. And the fair amount of people hire us knowing they can only do stage one. They don't have the funds for two. So they're kind of hoping, and they have a number of fallback positions on negotiation to get the case over with. So there's a lot of folks who do that, who I know just already decided they're not going to stage two. They're just going to end there. What I will tell you on the stages, and this is the golden nugget here. The biggest problem we have had here is that lawyers don't trigger the next stage unless they're time bound. So going to time bound changed everything for us. So when we had them event bound, they wouldn't trigger into the next stage. They would just work for free. And that was endemic. It was very few lawyers had were really tough about it. They just weren't. So going to time bound prevented all of that. And so now what happens quite a bit of time is that the case will be really close. And let's say there's 2 or 3 little issues that need to be resolved and the stage is over with. And so now the client's faced with an $8,000 fee for the next 7 months, but they know, everyone thinks that they're going to be only a few months or a few weeks even before the case can be settled. So we do break it up there. And if they can elect to do I think it's like a quarter of it, that'll get them 30 days. Another quarter will give them 30 days. Another quarter will give them 30 more days. So they're 90 days in, they've paid 3/4 of that second stage. Then if they don't settle even by then they just pay the last quarter of that stage and it'll get them through the 7 months. So we do allow for things like that because if he's got to still be reasonable, you can't charge $8,000 for a week's worth of work.
Right.
That won't work. So you got to still pass that test of being reasonable.
Jeff, I'm trying to, family law is the third rail for me. That's, that and title opinions I should never ever do. So I'm coming at it from a probate perspective in Oklahoma, which does have some structure that the family law has. But again, I'm trying to look at it from a different perspective. when you're putting through the time bound stages, that's where it doesn't matter. It's ignoring where we are in the court process for the most part. It's just where the from the X date that we sign in 3 weeks or 3 months out, and we're anticipating that the whole legal process has moved, right? Because we're pushing it. This whole premise, right, is that the attorney's pushing it through that stage as fast as we can.
That's right. It's think of it like a game. The ball can never be in your court. You need to return it. You got to push that. You got to push the matter through. And so, I don't know if that's responsive to what you're asking me.
I'm just trying to. My paradigm shift is trying hard to get out of that lane of billing by the hour, and some of the excuses that you had in your list are I was guilty of saying all those. Yeah, shifting the risk to the client, away from the firm, all that stuff. So I'm trying to wrap my head around if and when we get to this probate at a fixed fee, how to put stages in the probate world. And because I think we're trying to put some fixed fees. We are going to put fixed fees in the probate, but I don't know if we can do it on a time-bound perspective. I think we might just do state anyway. I don't know how to.
Event bound. That's what we called them, event bound.
Yeah.
By a certain type of court event that.
Yeah.
In our context, though, I can tell you, Brian, that boy, if you can at all do time bound, you're so much better off. If you want to scale it, if it's just you doing it, you could probably get by with it. But if you've got a team, that's just one more thing you have to track. Are you triggering? Are you moving to the second stage? Are you doing all that? Because the natural tendency is not want to do that. They don't like that conversation. It's not fun, and so they tend not to. Even though we paid our lawyers by what they collected, it was against their own interest not to do that. They wouldn't. Some of them wouldn't do it. A lot of them wouldn't do it.
So how do you compensate your lawyers to make them do this? So I guess how I don't need specifics, but generally like your bonuses are triggered or you're only paid off of what is collected. Like how are you guys structuring it?
Yeah, I was going to say, earlier you mentioned, I had a question here just to piggyback with that, which is, what percentage is base versus what percent is commission on an attorney because you are triggering these, paying based on these events.
Yeah. So the way we're doing it now, so we switched in December 1st of last year when we did the partner group model. So that's how we're doing it today. So I'll tell you how we comp there. So we pay the partner groups 38% of whatever they collect goes into their pool. So that's their top line. Out of that, the partners pay the true labor costs of all of their labor. So we have offshore like e-filers, for example, they pay those. Which is a small number. It's very small, but that's just one expense. They pay all their paralegals and they pay their associates and their senior associates out of that. And they keep the balance of that. They have a small, I don't know what the percentage, if I want to say it's probably 1.5% total of their facilities and overhead for office expenses. Because we let them like staff, put whatever they want in their office, but they're going to pay for it. So like office supplies, things like that. Because that's a variable expense they can control. We pay for their desks and everything else, all their marketing, we pay for all that. That's the only thing they pay for out of that 38%. What that yields out to be is that our partners are somewhere between, on the low end, 220 to high end, close to 400 is what they take home. Or, it's their gross. So they do fairly well there, and that's just going to get better over time as we learn how to do this, build this model a little bit better. The senior associates, they get paid 20% of whatever they collect, and they have their own cases that they own, and they collect those. The associates are all on a salary, and it's discretionary bonus to be paid by the partner to them. We just created a new position that's in between senior associate and the partner. We call that a partner, but now we've changed the partners to, I think, senior partner. I think is how we did it. So now we have an extra position, and we're paying those. Those are the ones that not really able to mentor and train as well, but they're really experienced and they're collecting machines. So they get paid 25%. It's like we have one attorney that she'll collect over $1 million this year. We have a couple attorneys over $1 million collections this year. Our average collection in the firm, including like the brand new associates all blended into that, is over 48,000, maybe closer to 50 now. So a month. So they do really well. on a collection basis. So that's how we can pay the 38% and still be able to pay them a healthy compensation on top of that. So we have a much higher typical overhead as a firm for two reasons. One is that we're kind of built because we want to scale the practice. So we've got we're really top heavy in compensation on the high end. So that's one issue. And because we get paid by the job, we're learning more and more all the time on how to divide our labor out. So out of 80 people on our team, I've got 20 of them in the Philippines or in Mexico right now and doing jobs that we need done, auditing or e-filing or, calling clients back on a follow-up process or potential clients back. So we've kind of figured out a lot of how to be more efficient with that. One other point too is that you have to get the paralegals on board with this too, because they're the quarterbacks. Actually, they're the ones that are really going to drive it through for the lawyers. So they need to buy into this idea of fixed fee too. So we actually pay them a little bonus based on the collections as well. And so we want them incentivized. And once we went to them being incentivized, we found a lot more alignment within the firm, and they're really eager to push cases through and get them concluded as well. And so you want them to be proactive about, hey, we need to get the MSA out. It's 60 days before the next hearings. Let's get it going. And so we want them as a part of that too, to drive that forward. So, and each PL typically handles 2 attorneys is kind of how our ratio works out. We have a few that average to do a little more than that, but most of them are at 2 attorneys. And if they're associates, they may not have a PL. They may be a group at that point.
What would you say your average paralegal takes home in a year?
75.
Okay.
To 80, somewhere in there. New one's probably 58. It's probably where we start at. Experienced people could be as high as 90. We just had someone retire a couple weeks ago, and I think she was closer to 90, Nancy.
When we're in the estate planning world, we're trying to almost invert that, where we have one attorney or a partner with multiple legal assistants, as they can do a lot more of the framework, if you will, on estate plans. Is that possible? And have you explored turning that relationship over the other way?
We've dreamed about it, and we're trying to move more in that direction. Given that so much of our stuff is litigation and that clients, I think, need a little more of that hand-holding. So we're probably not going to be as successful as you're going to be, or immigration lawyers or bankruptcy lawyers are at that process. But, we would love to be able to do more and more of that. When you're paid, this is a point that I want to make from a business standpoint. When you're paid by the job, you're going to find so many areas of misalignment and incentives to figure out how to do something more efficiently that you never dreamed of doing when you had an hourly model.
Right.
And what it opens up a big opportunity to create more value for the client, because you can give them certainty and a fixed fee. And if you can create more value, you can charge for more value. Simple as that.
So are you pretty automated in your initial processes, like creation of documents? I know I'd asked if you guys are form-based heavily in Wisconsin and Illinois. Like, I came from Colorado prior to law school. I worked at a court system there. It's so form-based, right? Like, you fill out the form that's required of you to file for divorce. And so here in Oklahoma, that's not how it is, right? Everybody's stuff looks different. Same substance, but different. And so are you all pretty automated or no?
No, we're like you. I mean, There's a couple counties that they get all upset if you don't put it on their form. Like, if you don't do your FDS on their form, they get all weird with you. But those are just one-off counties. That's just basically one-off judge that is like that. So
we have pretty firm. This is how we kind of do stuff. So it's efficient and consistent that this is how our stuff's going to work.
Correct.
So,
yeah, we've got a lot of forms internally that we all work off of, but it's not the same as the firm down the street.
Okay.
I mean, it looks kind of the same. The captions are the captions, right? You're going to be pretty close, but formatting can be different.
That's kind of how ours is. People who use headers don't use headers, use weird bullet points. I mean, everybody's same content, just kind of different in style.
Yeah. Yep. Same way here.
Okay.
Jeff, back to kind of, again, just giving you room to steer me away, but back to kind of the marketing conversation, just lead generation versus referrals. One interesting thing you said was how you take plenty of clients that can only afford stage one, and you already know going in they're not going to afford stage two, and you really work the case based on that knowledge. And do you find that digital marketing produces more of those people, and referral marketing produces more of the people who are going to pay $40,000 for their divorce? And then, again, do you have an expectation on your attorneys that they're generating referrals, or are you just filling them up because you're a marketing guru?
Well, I wish that I could say we were as granular in our data tracking as you are, but no, we don't know all that. I can tell you that 9% of our cases come from referral, which I think is bad given the size of our firm. So that leaves 91% come from some form of outbound marketing, digital marketing somewhere. We have a lot out there, so it's hard to even track that. So that if you have a high referral practice, that should give you a lot of encouragement, because those are obviously easier close, higher value, they pay more, all that stuff, because they don't have to decide if they trust you or not. They already believe that coming in. So we don't ask our lawyers to do anything at all for referrals. Only thing we do is we comp them 10% more if they bring in a referral. So our partners, they do a fair amount. So they get to 38% plus the 10% for those, because we don't have any marketing costs associated with them. So we do comp them for that, but we have no requirements around doing anything. What we found is that they just won't. If you're not geared for it, you won't do it. No matter what you tell, you're not going to do it. So just don't even try. And then, so that's how that's worked. That's like my big project for next year is how can we improve that experience so we start getting more referrals, because we do zero branding too, which is another problem. So everything we do is almost all direct response, which is no way to build your firm. So we're weak there.
Is that we're zero branding and 100% direct response too. So and it is a difficult way to build a firm. Although I would say that typically we're more like 40% referral based. So we are generating about 60%. Now, what I would say is that we generate a lot more leads from marketing, but our close rate is lower on marketing leads. Our close rate is higher on referrals. So it's not that we're generating 40% of our leads being referrals, but because of the close rate, it ends up new hires in a month tend to be about 40% referral and 60% marketing. That can fluctuate 5 to 10% either way, depending on the month and what's happening. But that's would be probably a yearly average.
Yeah, I wish ours was that way. It's not.
Yeah, it's really helpful.
How do you track those referrals? Sally gets how does she get paid for that referral? Is it because she knew them? And because I can paint a scenario where her elbows get sharp. Well, my brother only came here because of me, and I gave the referral to Glenn. But Glenn talked to my brother, and who gets that referral at that point in time? And
where every call coming in is recorded, and one of the first questions we ask is, "How'd you hear about us?" And if they don't say, Holly, I know Holly from such and such, and she referred me in, or I want to meet with her, then that's it. It's a firm.
Okay.
It's a firm issue. So I have zero tolerance for any quarreling on this issue. So we go back to that, and too bad. That's what it said. Because we also know this, they're going to get credit for stuff that they don't deserve. Reality is we're the ones that make it. They make the phone ring, not the lawyers. And so many people go online, they do the research, they find the lawyer they like because we put their own reviews on there. They come back 6 months later and they want to talk to that lawyer, and so they end up getting an extra credit for that case. But that's okay. It all works out. But yeah, that's how we do it.
Okay, thank you.
And are those? Sorry, I'm going to read my note here.
I have another question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So Eric's done a great job of building a normal front door where clients come in through the main call number and they fit our process really well. It's the exceptions that are killing us. When a client or a referral source financial planner is calling me on the estate planning, but they're calling me directly. And I get this, I don't know what to do with this thing. I don't know who to call, who gets this, how do I get and so they kind of get lost in the system because we say they're coming in the side door versus the front door. How do you get your team or how do you guys handle those when your attorneys are getting those direct calls?
Oh,
Yes.
that happens a lot. So what we tell the attorneys to do is, make the client feel good or make the referral source feel good, and then get that client in with someone from intake. And usually there'll be someone that they trust on the intake team because they got to run the conflict check and things like that and get them into our system. So that's how we'll do it. So like if a client calls that I want to hire you, Jeff, and I'm like, well, hear what they have to say, talk to them a little bit, and say, what I need you to do is I need you to get into our system. The best way to do that is to go talk to Mary, because Mary can run the conflict check and do all these things that we got to do as lawyers before we can actually have you come in and meet with me.
That's what I say. I tell them we have to do a conflict check, and it's just, I'd love to talk to you, great, but I need you to go through the system just to make sure we're on the up and up.
Should be that easy. I just have team members that refuse. This client would be mad if they had to go talk to somebody else.
Wait until you get burned on a conflict check, and then you're like, I should have never talked to this person. And learn your lesson and make sure it goes through the right system. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that is a big pain point today. Currently, we're trying to figure out how to get attorneys to trust the process to say, okay, great. Exactly what you said. Make them feel comfortable and then go, okay, here's the process, go to here. Now, do they that's the 12-minute initial call. Do they then have a 45-minute consultation because they already talked to the attorney and know them? Or do they skip that part because they're ready to hire because Glenn put them through intake for the conflicts check?
Yeah, we're too new to tell you what we should do. I think how that's going to work and how it's probably working de facto right now is that they'll go through the conflict checks and they'll go back to that lawyer that got the referral and they'll just do the consult. I think that's probably the more efficient way to do it rather than send them through a CLA.
Yeah, today we're trying to send them through the CLA, but it's a very awkward conversation because they're doing a consult with not the attorney they called initially. I think sometimes it works really well because the initial attorneys teed them up,
but
expect that.
But he has two different. He has a 12-minute informational gathering,
like our advocate
in the CLA,
like our intake attorney.
Right. So if we bring a client in and they talk to Janelle,
right,
and then they're out, that's great. But we don't want that new client that my brother coming all the way through the whole process to talk to Steve. That's the consult part.
Except he's the one. If we're keeping all systems aligned, that is the process because he's the one that does the consult. He's the one that takes the initial payment. He's the one that does everything. Where that attorney doesn't do those things. Again,
we're still wrestling it.
Well, I think yours is a little different because we just tell people, for me, well, that's fine. You can talk to Lowe, but you can pay $300 an hour. So, I mean, that's kind of how we've circumvented the need if they don't want to talk to the consult attorney. Right. Which is similar to what you were saying. They can still talk to a lawyer. It's just going to be that one-time planning session with the lawyer. I think she says like $400 an hour or whatever. So
that's really helpful. Jeff, what kind of financing options do you do? So if you're doing staged fees, do you let them pay that out over the length because it's time-based? Do you let them break that up into payments over that time base, or do they have to pay the full fee, the full stage up front?
So what we do is we have quite a few options, actually. First option is if you want to pay it all in advance, you get a 10% discount. So that's a lot of people want to try to find a way to take that. So if that's not an option, then they can go on a payment plan scenario with our firm. And the way we work our payment plans is we'll combine stage one. Mm-hmm. We'll combine stage one and stage two. So let's say it's $8,000 and $8,000. So that's $16,000. And then we'll make them pay 20% of that up front. Then we'll break up the remaining payments to twice a month payments, which is key, not once a month. Because if they're twice a month and they miss a payment, you can react quicker than if it's like they wait 30 days, then before you know it, you're 45 or 60 days into that no payment. So we do twice a month payments for the balance of that year. if they settle their case in stage one, they get anything that they've paid toward two refunded back to them. And if they get into stage two, they just keep paying the payments. So that's the second option that they've got. Another option, let's see, I know there's another option that we're doing. I can't remember what it was. It's not taken that often. We also work with a third-party payer or third-party called ePay management or something like that. And essentially, it's an outfit that basically aggregates a bunch of different lenders, and the client fills out a form and a credit check, and then they get offers right away, kind of like you would do for like a mortgage or something. They would get offers right away if they're going to be funded for that, and then we would get paid once the client gets paid from that loan. So that's a third party thing. That's not tied to us. What we found there is about 43% of the people who applied got funded, and it's usually at a high interest rate. Half of them have to be secured. It's just kind of messy. So we tell them they can do it, but it's not associated with us at all. We just know it's out there.
So would you offer funding for stage one, knowing they can really pay stage two? I mean, I guess that's when you say, look, if you can only afford stage one, we have to finish your case in stage one.
Well, first off, clients don't always tell us that their strategy is to only do stage one.
Okay.
We find out toward the end.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking to the client, so they may be mentioning that they may tell their lawyer, look, Lori, you got to settle this in stage one because I can't go to two. But those conversations are happening out of my line of sight. So we don't always know that, first off. If they only want to fund if they only want to go to stage one, then we make it, if they're going to do a payment plan, they have to be completely done with that payment plan within that first stage. We don't allow it to go beyond that.
Great.
So if it's 5 months, then it's a 5-month payment plan. Our collection rates are 97, 98%. So we want to keep it that way. We don't want to be a bank.
That's weird. We were really working on our banking skills.
We're really, really good at being a bank.
How do you in a law firm? I'm just kidding.
It's better than other firms, I will tell you that much. It ain't great, but it's not horrible.
Jeff, do you run into issues very often where, okay, you guys are working with this time-bound stage, but the opposing party is not? What if they drag it beyond what you've set for the time of that stage?
Yeah, given the volume we do, I know that happens. Lawyers talk, right? And so that they know it happens. I think it's so insignificant that I have no visibility. No one's ever told me that has happened, but I know it has to have. So it's a fear that we had when we first started, that word would get out that Sterling does it this way. So all you could do is got to drag the case along, and then it's going to put so much pressure on the opposing party, they're going to settle easier. Someone's probably tried that strategy, or maybe multiple lawyers have, but I don't know about it, and does not seem to be a real practical issue whatsoever.
That has been my biggest, when I've talked to the guys about it, that is what I'm terrified of, is that somebody knows that this is what we do, right? And then they're like, I'm just going to stall this out, or I'm going to start hitting you with the a la carte stuff that I know is going to rack up somebody's bill. Do you mean that they're not going to be able to pay? I'm going to depose your mom, and I'm going to depose you, and I'm going to do all these things to make this difficult to try to get you to settle. That's been a very vocal concern that I've had. So
we've had so many lawyers that have come here, worked here, and gone, we compete against right now, that everyone knows our retainer agreements, and it's still not an issue that anyone, I've never even heard them talk about it. No, I've never heard one lawyer say that happened in a case. Okay. I'm sure it has, but I haven't heard that. And if you're proactive, what we have found, what I think happens is that the parties want it over with. And so the two spouses are going to talk to each other and say, yeah, your lawyer's dragging out on purpose. You want to keep paying your lawyer by the hour, or do you want to get it over with? So I think there's some of that goes on, but I haven't found that to be an issue.
It's really helpful, man. What I know we're coming up on time here. Jeff, thoughts that we've missed? Like, what is it when you hear the questions we're asking? What are we leaving out that we should be thinking about?
Yeah. Hold on. Let me pull up my notes that I sent you guys.
For sure.
That was my brain dump, so I know it wasn't in like the right format for someone to
No,
really
no,
consume.
great, great.
But
Yeah, super helpful.
While you're digging for that, the consult process, you have the pre-consult, then the consult, and then you have the 5%, 50%, inside there. Um, are you auditing that to see if someone's really spending that type of time on there? Are you pulling that, or is that just a guideline for your team so they can feel that?
it's a guideline to give a visual to the lawyer of how much time they need to be doing those things.
Okay.
And we did audit it for a while and actually watched the seconds, and it really didn't really move the needle at all. The
Okay.
point I was trying to make with that is the biggest problem with lawyers and consults is they talk. That's the biggest problem. They just need to be quiet and listen and not try to impress how smart you are and how you know all the little nuances, and you want to tell the client all about that. They don't care. They just want you to know if they want to know if you like them, if you care about them, and you're going to help them. So you're going to only get there if you just shut up and listen and empathize with them and give very little legal advice. Get to the end and give the next step and let them know you're going to care about them. You're going to take care of them, and that handles 85% of it. So I put that in there, that visual, to let the lawyers know 50% of the time you need to just be listening. Don't ask questions about, what's the exact value of the 401k and like what pension fund is it. None of that matters in the consult.
Right. That's exactly right. And then you have that big question in there. And so your team really does say, hey, after this is over, what does success look like? Are they quoting that to your?
Yeah, and that's a marker in our auditing process that my people in the Philippines listen for, because that tells us that helps us get alignment, because a lot of times the client will tell you all this stuff, but what they really want is over here and they just didn't mention it. And so that you want to get alignment with them to know exactly what's important, because you're going to use that alignment to quote to, and you're going to use that alignment to actually advise to whenever you talk about the next steps, because you're going to remind them that's what you told me was important to you. And so, and plus it's a transition point in the consult that takes you from listening to feedback time. So I look for that, because you go through listening, you're going to have some feedback filter into that. Client wants an answer right then. And so you want to help them. You don't want to like ignore every one of their questions, but that's how we've done that.
Okay. Thank you.
It's huge. Anything else Jeff sent out in your notes that we didn't cover?
Yeah, if I were doing it over, I would go immediately to time-bound agreements. I would figure out a way that you could do that. I would have a really solid coding tool, so you can, like I sent you all the selects and the variables that we look at, and we put a dollar amount to each of those and take some playing around to get that right. And I would work really hard to understand how to sell it, because that's the hardest part for lawyers to get their heads around, is the selling part of it. And if you've already got a guy that's doing it, then that's great. If you can have one person do all your sales, that's a dream. So those are the things that's taken us the longest to learn, that have been the most costly mistakes. Not having those three things.
Do you get much sticker shock from people? Because obviously it's going to cost more than a retainer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It happens every day. Like, oh my goodness, 16,000. I know so-and-so is only 5. Well, let me explain, 5,000 is month 1. You're going to get another one of those bills later, and then it's going to add up. So yeah, I mean, we have to get comfortable that some people just aren't going to pay that, so this is a game that you got to think of it like in a bell curve. You're really aiming for that 90% in the middle, not the 5% on the end, the 5% on the other end. Those, like, we're never going to be like that lawyer in town who does all the business cases for these like super rich people. That's never going to be us. We don't really fit that, but we want to be basically everyone below that, down to, that middle class level, for those who want to pay for a full rep.
Y'all thinking of expanding into Oklahoma?
Florida's next for us.
Well, we'd love to have you. This has been great. What else? So everybody encouraged to go crush it, go knock it out.
We'll socialize it among yourselves. If you want to meet again sometime and kind of do follow-up questions, I'm happy to help any way I
I'd
can.
maybe like to chat with one of your partners about how like your structure works. I mean, case wise, because I think you guys' cases work a little bit differently. But I'd want to talk about some of the movement portions.
Mhm.
And I see you guys don't usually do discovery in phase one. How they feel comfortable with full asset understandings. You know, that we know that we're hitting everything and not missing something because discovery is in stage 2. Just some little nuancy stuff that I think would be nice to talk to somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
Practicing it.
If you could just email me, Glenn,
Yep.
and just ask that, and then I'll connect you with a couple people, and then I'm sure someone will be
Okay.
more than happy to talk with you. Holly probably comes to mind. She was the original that's been with me the longest.
I just had my team's going to say the same thing. Like we do discovery to cover arrears. Like, you know, what I mean, like how are we going to, you know, just curious wise. So.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Great meeting you.
Man, Jeff,
Thank you.
couldn't thank you enough, man. This is awesome. Really impressed with what you're doing, and really impressed with your willingness to just give it away and share it. It means a lot. It just says a lot about who you guys are, that you're willing to, open wide and give it out. That's not commonly found in this space for sure. And so, just really, it's super honorable. So appreciate that. Really grateful for the time. And you got some friends in Oklahoma, so if we can ever do anything for you, man, don't hesitate.
All right.
to reach out.
That sounds great.
Including tickets to a Thunder basketball game, which you probably don't get a chance to see. But
You can't hold on to any of your stars. They keep leaving.
Yeah. So if you get lucky, you get all 3 of them at one time. So you got to schedule early.
Right.
But those are how we can return the favor. But really appreciate your kindness. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
All right. Talk to you later.